Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Spoken Greats podcast, where we take great ideas from great books. We're looking again at Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and we're continuing with Book 5 today and seeing what we can learn from it. Here is a way to understand what sort of things the majority take to be goods. If you think of the true goods, there are wisdom, for example, self-control, justice, courage. With these in your mind, you could not give any credence to the popular saying of too many goods to make room, because it will not apply. But bearing in mind what the majority see as goods, you will hear and readily accept what the comic poet says as a fair comment. Even the majority can intuit this difference. Otherwise, this saying would not both cause offence and rejection, while at the same time we take it as a telling and witty comment on wealth and the privileges of luxury and fame. Go on then, and ask whether we should value and judge as goods those things which we afforded them would properly apply to their owner the saying, "He is so rich, he has no room to shit." So here Marcus is referring to what's known as the Stoic virtues. So these were courage, wisdom, self-control, and justice. And he's trying to make the point here that you could never have too much of these things. No one is ever too wise, or he has far too much self-discipline or self-control. And he contrasts that with what people typically value, material goods, which there clearly is a case there to be had, that beyond a certain level of fulfillment in the material world, these things actually start to become a burden. And he lines it up there with someone being so rich they have no room to shit. Many people ironically pursue wealth in the hopes of escaping the rat race, so they will accumulate as much stuff as possible. But ironically, when you get to the point where you have enough wealth where you don't have to work a full-time job, if you accumulate a lot of stuff, your wealth suddenly turns into a full-time job. If you have a certain level of complexity in your life, you have effectively turned yourself into a corporation. If you imagine a mega wealthy individual who owns a 30-bedroom mansion with a golf course, all of the people that you would have to hire just to maintain that place to prevent it from rotting away into the ground, you've created another layer of complexity in your life where your full-time job is now managing all the people who make your lifestyle possible. And Marcus questions whether we should view such materialism as a good, like what many people do. He's calling into question what many people view as admirable. It reminds me of a quote from Rick and Morty when Rick says to a crowd that are booing him, "Your boos mean nothing. I've seen what makes you cheer." Should you value what other people also claim to want just because they say that they want it? Many of us can fall into this trap and keeping up with the Joneses competition, where we seek the approval of others by pursuing goals that we don't particularly want to pursue ourselves, but we think that it will garner us respect or admiration of others. There's an unspoken reality there that many people probably don't actually want what they say they want. I am made up of the causal and the material. Neither of these will disappear into nothing. Just as neither came to be out of nothing, so every part of me will be assigned its changed place in some part of the universe, and that will change again into another part of the universe, and so on to infinity. A similar sequence of change brought me into existence, and my parents before me, and so back in another infinity of regression. Nothing forbids this assertion, even if the universe is subject to the completion of cycles. So here Marcus is looking at himself from the level of being connected to the whole, right down to the last molecule, the last atom. We are, in a sense, connected to everything else. And everything else that has happened previously has led us to where we are now, from a volcanic eruption millions of years ago to burning stars in the far reaches of the universe. All of these elements and compounds have been recycled over and over again and repackaged in different ways. And there are parts of historic events within us right now, and there will be parts of us in the future when we are gone. Our component parts will be a part of new structures, of new things. This is the constant change of state that we are in. We think of death, for example, as a singular event, but really our bodies are in a constant state of death and renewal. We are losing millions and millions of cells, which are dying and being replaced every hour, every day. In a sense, we will live on in some form or another, not perhaps in a way that we recognize it, but this is how Marcus comes to the conclusion that we did not come from nothing, and nor will we be nothing after death. And this process will go on, and so it's nothing to fear. Reason and the art of reasoning are faculties self-determined by their own nature and their own products. They start from the relevant premise and follow the path to the proposed end. That is why acts of reason are called right acts, signifying the rightness of the path thus followed. One should pay no attention to any of those things which do not belong to man's portion incumbent on him as a human being. They are not demanded of a man. Man's nature does not proclaim them. They are not consummations of that nature. Therefore, they do not constitute man's end either, nor yet any means to that end. That is good. Further, if any of these things were incumbent on a man, then it would not have been incumbent on him to disdain or resist them. We would not commend the man who shows himself free from the need of them. If these things were truly goods, a man who fails to press for his full share of any of them could not be a good man. But in fact, the more a man deprives himself of these or such like, or tolerates others depriving him, the better a man he is. Making peace with one's wants and desires is the ultimate power play, because you're no longer trying to play the game. You have exited. In Stephen Pressfield's novel Virtues of War, a philosopher is confronted by someone talking about Alexander the Great and says, "This man has conquered the world. What have you done?" And the philosopher replies, "I have conquered the need to conquer the world." Deciding enough is the path to self-control. And that could be anything from the material world, I don't need a bigger house or I don't need a promotion, through to I don't need another biscuit or I don't need to order a takeaway tonight. It's worth remembering Marcus Aurelius was Emperor of Rome, so he had the power to get absolutely anything that he wanted at all times. Now, it's not too different to the average person in the Western world's life today. There is an infinite amount of calories that you can consume, or you can drink yourself into a coma, or an infinite number of porn videos to watch. There is no limit on the amount of pleasure that you can pursue. The only limit is the limit that you yourself choose to implement or not. And this is why self-control is so admirable, is because it has to be willed from within. It is not something that someone else can impose on you. And it is far easier to conquer another country than it is to conquer oneself. Your mind will take on the character of your most frequent thoughts. Souls are dyed by thoughts. So die your own with a succession of thoughts like these. For example, where life can be lived, so can a good life. But life can be lived in a palace, therefore a good life can be lived in a palace. Again, each creature is made in the interest of another. Its course is directed to that for which it was made. Its end lies in that to which its course is directed. And where its end is, there is also for each is its benefit and its good. It follows that the good of a rational creature is community. It has long been shown that we are born for community, or was it not clear that inferior creatures are made in the interest of the superior, and the superior in the interest of each other? But animate is superior to inanimate, and rational to the merely animate. We are influenced by our thoughts and the stories that we tell ourselves repeatedly. Someone could talk themselves into believing that their current circumstances are unbearable and hell on earth, and someone else would dream of having the life that they live. And so it really depends on your frame of perspective. It's interesting here that Marcus notes that a good life can even be lived in a palace. And you may be thinking, yeah, I bet. Of course you can have a bloody great life in a palace, right? And I think here he's trying to make the point about being a good man and living morally. And it's possible even within a palace where you are surrounded by temptations and people following all of your orders and wishes. It is still possible to exercise self-control, be courageous, be just and kind to people. I think it's always telling when you're in a service industry environment with someone. Let's say you go out to a restaurant and notice how they interact with the waiter, or notice how someone interacts with the cleaners in a building. These are not people that we are obliged to be polite. They have no power. We don't particularly need anything from them. And in principle, there's no transactional motive to be polite to them. And so it's always telling of someone's character, how they act towards such people in that moment. Are they suddenly very rude to waiters? Whereas if they were in an office talking to a manager, they would be very respectful. The way how someone acts when no external constraints are placed on them is their true nature. And he goes on to a further point about us being made for community. If you think even in a prison where you have the most disagreeable people who may hate other people, the worst punishment imaginable is solitary confinement. Our brains are made for social interactions, and we literally drive ourselves insane if we don't have other people around us. That's how vital it is to our very nature. And so doing things for the benefit of our community is also good for the individual. To pursue the impossible is madness, and it is impossible for bad men not to act in character. There'll often be some kind of outrage in the news where someone will say something controversial, or human rights abuses will come out from some country that's living under a dictatorship. And there's always an outcry of how can such horrible things happen, or how can these people exist? But it's not news, is it? We know these people exist and we know that's what they do. You wouldn't expect a headline in the news that says dogs bark. You'd go, yeah, dogs bark. That's what they do. And there are people in this world who commit evil. We should not be surprised when that happens. Frankly, we should be surprised that it doesn't happen more often than it does. If you go into a scenario understanding this aspect, this darker side of human nature, You can't be surprised when people lie, people cheat, people steal, people play games. You don't have to be roped in. You don't have to respond to their level and play their games. But you do need to be aware of them for your own protection. Nothing happens to any creature beyond its own natural endurance. Another has the same experience as you. Either through failure to recognize what has happened to him, or in a display of courage, he remains calm and untroubled. Strange, then, that ignorance and pretension should be stronger than wisdom. Isn't it funny how people can experience exactly the same thing and feel a different way? Or we can observe exactly the same thing happening and come to a different conclusion about what it is that we see. And I think that's a kind of source of comfort if you find yourself in a situation which you think you cannot endure, and you can look to the example of someone else who has gone through exactly the same thing. All that was different was the thoughts they were having. So if you can change your thoughts, you can do the same thing. It should be noted that courage is not the absence of fear. It's taking action despite the presence of fear. Someone who is fearless is not courageous by definition. And so here where Marcus is talking about ignorance and pretension should be stronger than wisdom. If you are courageous, you are defying reality as it is. You are acting in contrary to what the situation tells you to preserve yourself, to not act, to hide, to run away. And so to be courageous in this scenario is to merely change your frame of perspective on something. Things of themselves cannot touch the soul at all. They have no entry to the soul and cannot turn or move it. The soul alone turns and moves itself, making all externals presented to it cohere with the judgments it thinks worthy of itself. We can think of the soul here as our inner self and our concept of who we are as a person. The only externals which have an effect on us are the things which we allow to have an effect on us. There is no equality in terms of whether someone has the capacity to deal with an event or not, other than whether they choose to. One person may have the equivalent reaction when seeing their inbox full of 200 emails to someone else facing a firing squad. Materially, they are worlds apart and absolutely totally different experiences. But psychologically, the same sense of dread and fear has overtaken the individual. So if our brains don't really respond to the material world or reality as it stands, then that would imply that we have a lot more control over our mind than we tend to think. We tend to outsource our feelings to the external world and say, I feel this because of that. Really, we feel this because we've chosen to feel that way, and we can change that. People telling you who you are will not change who you are, but you telling yourself who you are will change. Marcus elsewhere in Meditations has made the analogy of if you were cursing at a tree, calling it every insult under the sun, the fruit it produces isn't suddenly going to taste any more bitter or sour because of all the hatred you've hurled at it. It is unaffected by it. And so our minds have the capacity to be the same. The goodness of our character can remain unaffected by what goes on around us. In one respect, man is something with the closest affinity to us, in that it is our duty to do good to men and tolerate them. But insofar as some are obstacles to my proper work, man joins the category of things indifferent to me, no less than the sun, the wind, a wild animal, These can impede some activity, yes, but they form no impediments to my impulse or my disposition, because here there is conditional commitment and the power of adaptation. The mind adapts and turns round any obstacle to action to serve its objective. A hindrance to a given work is turned to its furtherance. An obstacle in a given path becomes an advance. Here Marcus is talking about there really are no obstacles to the internal pursuit of being a good person. All that the external world can do is present you with more opportunities to show you are a good person. If you're being led down the path of more temptations, you've been given more of an opportunity to show self-control. In the same way, if someone does wrong to you, you're given the opportunity to demonstrate more justice. If you're surrounded by fools, here is an opportunity to demonstrate you have wisdom. And if you're in danger, now is the opportunity to show you have courage. None of these things are obstacles in themselves. They're more like a test to see if you hold the virtues that you claim you do. And the more those virtues are tested, the stronger they will become. Revere the ultimate power in the universe. This is what makes use of all things and directs all things. But similarly, revere the ultimate power in yourself. This is akin to that other power. In you too, this is what makes use of all else, and your life is governed by it. So here, Marcus really is talking about the sort of godly power we have internally and compares it with the force driving the universe and existence, in that this force drives everything and can drive everything in the external world, but it cannot drive you internally. It's the one thing in your control, and it is really your superpower. All the armies in the world combined, with all the gold in Fort Knox and all the Pringles in a supermarket, cannot change your mind if you choose that they can't. And that's the crucial part. If you choose, you can choose to let them, or you can choose not. That is your prerogative. That is what is within your power. And just remember that in everything you do in life, there's always a choice. Even when you think you're being forced to do something, just remember that you are still making a decision. You have chosen not to face the consequences of not doing something. Or even when you don't do something, that's still a choice. There's a quote from Starship Troopers that I absolutely love. Rico can't make his mind up about whether he's going to enlist in the military, and his teacher gives him a word of advice. Figuring things out for yourself is the only freedom anyone truly has. People can't make decisions for you. They can't make your mind up. You have to decide, and that is the only thing you can do. Even when you have no physical power in the material world, what you choose to believe, what you choose to think, that is your only freedom. That is the only thing that is within your control. So use that power. Use it wisely. That's all we got time for today. Thank you for listening to the Spoken Greats podcast. If you enjoyed that episode, please like and subscribe to my channel. Be sure to check out my blog at spokengreats.com and look forward to more episodes with more great ideas from great books. See you soon.